Miss Yarodabers.
Ave Satanas! Hail Satan! Hail Satan! Hail Satan!
Greetings, heathens. Welcome to Hail Satan. This is the podcast exploring Satanism, culture, and life in general through the eyes of modern Satanists. My name is Joseph Rose. I'm a member of an amazing independent congregation called Satanic Delco, and we welcome members from anywhere in the world. If you want to learn a little more about that, visit satanicdelco.com. And speaking of Satanic Delco, I always mean to give some updates about what the gang is up to. So we just wrapped up our recurring blasphemous book club. This time around, we were reading a book called Recapture the Rapture by Jamie Wheel. Our third annual Outsider Achievement Award is in progress right now. We're raising funds that will be awarded to some deserving high school graduates in the very near future. We are preparing for our third annual Satanic in Nature camping trip. That's always a fun time. We get to meet new members that travel in from various places, and we freak out at some poor campground for the weekend. It's a fun time. And we are planning for Dance with the Devil, which is our masquerade ball held right around Halloween. Tickets just went on sale for that, so if a satanic masquerade ball sounds appealing to you and you can make it to the suburbs of Philadelphia, drop a line. There may be some tickets available for you. Today, we're going to discuss what the kids call cultural appropriation and apply it to the world of Satanism. First things first. Let me acknowledge a whole bunch of awesome Satanists that have joined us recently through Patreon. We've got Lulu, Hazy, Vitor, Annalisa, Stephanie, Shauna, Mark, Alina, Robert, Wowitz May, I think, Dana, Christian, Jockton, Brandy, Kamala, Madeline, Null Call, Emily, and Craig. Thank you all very much. You guys make this whole thing possible, and I am very grateful for your support. Thank you. If you all have a moment out there, please visit the website at hailsatanpodcast.com. You'll find links to join me on social media, a form to send me an email, and a link to join up with us all on Patreon. We have a few different tiers there to choose from with various benefits, including the amazing Greetings from Hell Satanic Postcard of the Month Club. That is the most direct way you can support me and this show if you'd like to do that. So visit hailsatanpodcast.com. All right, guys. I am once again joined by the lovely and powerful Kirsten. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for calling me powerful.
Yeah. Why not? You're powerful.
I am.
Did you just realize, or?
I don't know if no one's... I've thought in my head I'm really powerful before, but no one's really said it out loud before.
Oh, well, I think you're powerful.
Thank you.
Take it. We're here today to talk about satanic appropriation, perhaps mixed in with a bit of cultural appropriation generally, when it's appropriate. Is that about right?
Yeah.
To start us off, just so everyone is on the same page, I have a definition of cultural appropriation. It is the unacknowledged or inappropriate adoption of the customs, practices, ideas, etc. of one people or society by members of another and typically more dominant people or society. For example, his dreadlocks were widely criticized as another example of cultural appropriation. How do you feel about this cultural appropriation bit?
I know it's a hotly debated topic. Some people think it doesn't exist at all. Some people think it's a real problem that's running rampant. My opinion on it is that I guess it's a case-by-case basis.
Give me a real common example of something that you think does fall into cultural appropriation.
Oh my gosh.
Which is to say that there's a negative connotation attached to it.
It's a good question.
It is, because I'm with you. I can't think of a goddamn thing because I do not fucking care about cultural appropriation. Now, I know, just as I said that, Several listeners dropped dead in shock. And I'm sorry, guys. Rest in peace. But for the most part, and again, I'm sure there are exceptions, we are considered the great melting pot. Okay, that's what the United States is. People from every corner of the world, for any number of different reasons, end up here. And they bring their culture with them, bit by bit. And they share in our pre-existing culture, and we share in theirs, and they all mix together. And so we become the great melting pot. The Polish people and Italian people and the Chinese people and every other kind of people mix together, and we share each other's food and clothes and hairstyles and language and customs, and we do all kinds of stuff together. And that seems to be the most natural way that it could go. That seems to be the one way that makes the most sense. The way that doesn't make sense to me is that everyone build a little box around their own culture from where they originated from, and nobody else is allowed to have at it. They don't share it. Others can't take it. That sounds like ridiculous bullshit to me. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, when you asked that question, what do you think of it? My answer was, I believe that it is, a real thing, but I have a nuanced opinion. I don't think that everything is cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
And I still say that, but I still can't think of a specific example.
Yeah.
I do think that not everything that people accuse of being cultural appropriation is damaging. For one, I think that not everything that's being accused of being cultural appropriation is necessarily even, appropriated from whatever culture it was that they're claiming it to be.
It probably comes down to an individual's feelings. Like, for example, you're a person from Japan. Name a place. Okay, Japan, for example. Someone in America is doing something using a Japanese, a hairstyle that originated in Japan, or wearing a style of clothing that originated in Japan. And a Japanese person might think to themselves, oh, I don't like that they're doing that. I don't like the way they're doing it. They're not doing it in a way that is true to how I do it or my people do it, and therefore that's not right. But if you throw a rock in any direction, you can hit another person from that culture who has no problem with what's being done. It's on a case-by-case basis, just like every feeling that every individual out there has. And there's no rules about this stuff.
Yeah.
There's no obvious line to cross or not.
Yeah, and I guess I'll say there's a couple different ways that you could be accused of cultural appropriation. You might be exploiting that culture for money or fame or whatever.
What would that be?
The example I always use is Aquafina, who I'm not familiar really with her.
Oh, Aquafina,
at all.
yeah.
I don't know. I don't even know how I don't know. People accused her of faking her accent. I don't really know if that's true at all. I have no idea.
So Aquafina, for those of you who don't know, she is an Asian actress, comedian, rapper type, and she speaks often enough, at least when she's in character on TV, she speaks in what the kids call a black accent. Right? Do I have that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know that a couple of years ago, I know there was drama. The drama was like, I think she was claiming that that's her natural accent, the way she talks because of where she grew up and all that stuff.
Right. If you grow up around people in a certain culture, you naturally will rub off.
Right. And so, and some people said she was faking it, I guess. And I don't really know what the resolution of that was. I don't know or really care about Aquafina, so I apologize if...
Well, yeah, but she's a fine example. There's two options. That she feels that that's her natural way of speaking.
Right.
Or she made a conscious decision that she wanted to speak that way.
Yeah.
So in either of those cases, does it fucking matter?
Well, in the case that, to talk about the exploitation thing, if the idea is she wants to talk that way because she thinks that will make her successful, financially or famous or whatever,
sure,
then is that, appropriation. If that's the accent she grew up with, she's probably capable of code switching just like everybody else. That doesn't mean you're faking an accent. I, again, don't know if Aquafina was or is. But to your question about is something necessarily wrong if it's quote unquote appropriation, well, there's sort of a new term that's been thrown out there recently that it's not a new term anymore necessarily, but it seemed to have come about after the rise in discussion about cultural appropriation, and that term is cultural appreciation.
If you're doing it the right way, according to the gatekeepers, you're doing appreciation. And if you're doing it wrong, then you're appropriating.
Right. For some people, appreciation might mean just that you do the thing or dress the way or whatever, and also are celebratory to people of that original culture that do the thing, or you that might be it. And it might just be like, oh, I like that they do that thing. I like when they do it, and I'm going to do it too. And I don't put you down for wearing dreadlocks because I'm wearing, I wear them too. That could be appreciation enough for some people to call that cultural appreciation. But for other people, cultural appreciation would require the intense research on the history of dreadlocks and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, most people in America are going to pick up whatever thing it is, a style of dress, some sort of way of speaking, food, music, any of the many pieces that make up one's culture. If you're an American living in America, you could pick up any of these things from anywhere at any age and have no knowledge as to where that thing came from. What you're getting is someone in America doing a thing, cooking a food, doing any of the things we mentioned, and you like it. Oh, I like this food that I had at this random restaurant one day. I like that. I'm going to make that. I'm going to have that be my thing. Or I saw this girl and she had this cool hairstyle and this style of tattoo, or you name it. And I just can't find a part of that should be made off limits or that should be closed off to anyone. I don't go there.
People use the word cultural appropriation sometimes, when I would just use the word blatantly disrespect, like blackface isn't cultural appropriation. That's a fucking different thing.
Yeah, of course. That's not. Yeah. There's no confusion.
And it might be easy to think about when you say something like blackface, because we all agree blackface bad.
Yeah,
but
it would never even occur to me to attach that to cultural appropriation.
Right. But when you wear a Native American Halloween costume, people do call that cultural appropriation. Is that cultural appropriation, or is it the same thing as, blackface? You've just created a caricature of a community or whatever, and started doing that. Now, that's, I guess, a debate. It's an area that you can get into the weeds of the costumes. I know people do have opinions, but I think that's the one where most people are it's like easiest to point out as people having a real problem with it.
Right. That's sort of, okay, it's Halloween, and I'm going to pretend to be a person of another culture, and I'm going to do it in like some cartoonish way. And so there's that on one hand, and whether or not you think that's good or bad or appropriation or not, that's one thing. But then on the other hand, we have just real life, like every day that's not Halloween, and you're just picking out your real outfit and doing your real hair to go to your real job or date. It's not like you're dressing up. I'm not pretending to be Japanese today. Yeah. I'm just wearing this shirt that has a style that originated in Japan. Right. And those feel like pretty different things. Yeah. The Halloween costume thing, that example, obviously stuff like blackface or, overtly negative racist type things, that's not really even in the scope here. Of course, that stuff is not cool. But even the Halloween costume stuff, I can see how there's gray area there. If a kid, you could imagine a kid, especially adults, all right, we get a little bit more of a clue. But there's a gray area in there too. A young person maybe, okay, I'm going to be I don't know, me and my friend, we're cowboys and Indians. Yeah. Maybe there's something weird there. Yeah. Yeah. But a lot of it comes down to intent.
You could also say that it's, I don't know. You could. I don't often see the news articles phrase it this way, but you could also say there's a difference between dressing up as like a person, like a real person, versus like or like a character, like I'm gonna be Pocahontas for Halloween, versus I'm gonna dress up like a caricature of a Native American. Yes, and
I think intent matters. I think intent probably matters the most. Honestly, that's what I really think. I think, did someone do that in a way to be disrespectful? Was their intent to say, "Fuck you, Polish people, I'm going to do a Polish thing today to disrespect you"? That, I don't know who does that, but that would not be cool, I guess. But if you're just doing a thing, you like a thing, and you're not necessarily paying any specific reverence to that thing, you're not celebrating the origin of this Polish style of shirt, you're just wearing it because you thought it was nice. I think that's fine.
Yeah. I don't want to get into the weeds of this, but then you say intent matters. Yeah, intent matters, but then there's also, are you, willfully ignorant to the history or the culture or whatever? Are you whatever is another thing.
Sure.
Like a common example might be if you wear a Native American headdress because you think that they're cool, but you are not aware that that is reserved for, I believe that, I don't know if this is true, but the chiefs of tribes or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't even know if they use the word chiefs or if that is just what I've been told my whole life. So I apologize if anyone's listening.
Right.
And they're like, "Wow, she's so ignorant, and she's talking about other people like they're ignorant." No, I'm.
Well,
we
look,
don't all know things,
and
but,
the reality is a lot of people don't know a lot of things
Yeah.
because we can't, all of us, be a walking encyclopedia of the history of every fucking thing in the world, especially when it's not like you went to some foreign land and embedded yourself in some foreign culture and stole parts of it for yourself. You're just living your life in your home country. I'm an American, born here. So people walking around on this same land that I am, on the United States, we're sharing cultures. They're doing their stuff, I'm doing my stuff, and we're all sharing, and it's all bleeding together, and it ends up kind of being one. If you want to have an isolated culture that is all for you and your people and no one else can have it, I don't know, man. I don't know what to tell you. Stay wherever you want to be, build some walls, and don't open the door, or else people are going to see what you're up to. And if you don't want to share, I don't know, go somewhere where sharing isn't a thing, maybe. But here, it's a melting pot. And if somebody likes fucking dreadlocks, they can have dreadlocks. And I don't know or care where the first dreadlock happened in the world. And you know what? You don't know either. Whoever out there is saying they originated in Africa. No, they originated in Viking cultures. No, they originated in this fucking sect in Scandinavia in 1301. I don't care.
Yeah.
Somebody probably had a knotted string of hair somewhere before that, and you don't know about them. And if you want to have a knotty string of hair, you can fucking have it.
Are you going to get in trouble
that's my
for saying
stance.
naughty string of hair?
I don't know, but I used to have dreadlocks, and I had a knotty string of hair. I had a bunch of knotty strings of hair in my fucking head. I had dreadlocks. I did. While I was in college for a period of time, I had some half-assed dreadlocks.
Okay.
And I didn't mean to steal them from a culture. I just thought, let me try dreadlocks. And no one ever had a problem with them. But if a person of any culture from anywhere, of any age, came up to me and had a problem with me, white boy Joseph in Philadelphia, having dreadlocks, I would have laughed so hard that I may have actually died on the spot from laughter. That's how silly that would have been. But luckily, nobody was that fucking silly, and nobody ever said that to me. And so that's my general feeling about cultural appropriation. Yes, there are probably isolated examples. You can always find an exception of somebody doing a thing that feels somehow inappropriate. But again, I feel like intent is at the core of what makes something right or wrong. And I just don't buy into the idea that someone can be a gatekeeper of a cultural thing and say, you can't do it because it means this to me. Well, good for you. It means this to me and I'm going to do it. So that leads us to specifically what we're talking about, which is the idea of satanic appropriation.
Right.
And so what the hell is satanic appropriation?
Well, satanic appropriation is the cultural appropriation of Satanism. So the appropriation of satanic symbology, mythology, philosophy, aesthetic, whatever it is, without appropriate recognition or knowledge of, or whatever you think they need to do to be allowed to do those things.
Yeah. So in the context of general cultural appropriation, the originating culture that we're talking about is Satanism. Mm-hmm. And then there are people out there who may, or I guess we're talking about people who are not Satanists, do not actually identify as a Satanist, and they're using parts of our culture, which would be, you said satanic symbols, wearing a pentagram on a shirt or a necklace or an earring or an inverted cross or Baphomet.
Do you think that if a person goes to Hot Topic and they buy some pentagram earrings, do you think they're appropriating Satanism? Do you think that's inappropriate of them to do?
Do I?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I don't either.
I do not give a shit.
In fact,
our friend Jerry, he had a Hail Satan inverted cross sticker on his car. It was vandalized, of course. He was vandalized for having that sticker, but he had it. And as we know, Jerry refuses to identify as a Satanist. But yet he wore that sticker. He had that on his car.
It's internalized Satanophobia or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, no, do I feel bad? Do I feel that Jerry is wrong for appropriating our satanic culture? No, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit. You go to the mall and buy all the inverted crosses and pentagrams and Baphomets that you want, and I don't care.
Yeah, and I would go so far as to say, dear listener, that if you get mad at people wearing pentagrams who don't identify with the term Satanist, then I think that you are silly.
Yeah.
And that's my nice word for it.
Yeah. Now, okay. So we will, of course, we try to see the sides of these things. Now, if I imagine you out there, dear listener, you take your Satanism very seriously, right? This is your religion. There are a lot of reasons that people attach themselves to Satanism. For some, and we'll get into this, for some it's activism. For some it is deeply held religious beliefs and any number of things. Maybe it's more casual. Maybe you're learning, maybe you like the aesthetic. Maybe you like, like I said, the politics. Maybe you like the music. Who knows? Maybe you're just into Slayer. I don't know. But you get into some kind of Satan shit. Now, some people do take it seriously. And so their perspective is, well, this is a real thing. I have these deeply held religious beliefs, and these symbols mean something to me. And so it feels disrespectful or not nice for you to so casually take these things as nothing more than a fashion choice, right?
Well,
that's kind of the perspective.
That's kind of the perspective, and I don't know. You sound like you might be leading on to let's understand the other side thing, and I do understand that fashion choice. But let me tell you, the goths have been wearing that stuff since way before most of you have been alive.
Oh yeah,
and I think that it's a silly thing to be mad about the aesthetic of Satanism being appropriated, right? Like that to me that is the silly. It sounds like such a cartoonish thing to me to be mad about. Yes. But you know who's mad about it?
Who's mad about it?
Peggy Nadramia.
Peggy Nadramia from the Church of Satan.
Yeah.
Now, what's her deal?
She is the high priestess of Church of Satan.
Okay.
And she, Church of Satan people are always mad at non-Church of Satan people for using the word Satanism. But Peggy has written an entire essay about the cultural appropriation of Satanism.
What is this essay called for people that want to find it?
I believe it is called The Cultural Appropriation of Satanism.
There you go.
She talks about a few things, but one of the things that she talks about is these, she calls them hot topic Satanists. Mm-hmm. I usually just use the word hot topic goths. You voiced at the beginning of this episode your opinions on cultural appropriation and that generally you think it's silly.
Right.
Obviously I can't look at every online space and I can't talk to every Satanist in the world, but the few spaces that I looked at, most people there seem to, it wasn't a common discussion topic, but not... think that the idea of cultural appropriation was sort of, at the very least, blown up out of hand.
Yeah. Well, and if you are a Satanist of almost any kind, it's damn hard and probably a bit hypocritical of you to accuse anyone else of cultural appropriation. Because if you're a Satanist, your guy, your whole mascot, and a large bunch of your symbology and everything, your whole lure, is appropriated from another culture.
Yeah.
We took Satan, we took the pentagram, we took the cross, we took fucking, you name it.
We took all of it.
Every single thing.
And it is the truest form of cultural appropriation because we meant it to be, derogatory.
Yeah. Not only is it, like I was saying, intent matters, and it's not good if you're doing it intentionally to be spiteful or negative. Satanism literally did. It's literally intending to be spiteful.
Yeah.
It doesn't get more appropriated than that.
Oh, yeah. So I mentioned that because Peggy begins her essay by saying the same thing. It's clickbait virtue signaling, the term cultural appropriation.
Yes.
And she says, she rolls her eyes at it. She says there's very little I'll accept as cultural appropriation as opposed to assimilation or just appreciation.
Right.
She says that. But she says, I know it when I see it. And I see it for Satanism.
Right. So I mostly agree with Peggy, right? She's on the same page as me. until it gets to people appropriating Church of Satan. That's where she draws the line.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, I mean, that's the case for all of us, right? We draw our own line. We have our own threshold for what is acceptable or appropriate and what isn't. And Peggy thinks it's silly virtue signaling, and I agree. She differs in the fact that she draws the line at when it involves appropriating the Church of Satan's symbols or any of their stuff, I guess.
Yeah. Or as they put it, appropriating Satanism.
Satan, right, of course. Because they are the
one
arbiters
true,
of Satanism.
Yes.
Yes, right. We can't ever forget that.
So she wrote about these hot topic Satanists, and in the same segment she writes about these musicians, these bands that appropriate the idea of Satan or the
heavy metal bands and stuff that write about Satan, put Satan-y pictures on their albums and merch, and create an image.
It's a grab for attention. It's a commercialization that she doesn't like. She doesn't like that people are just capitalizing on Satanism. They're exploiting Satanism and satanic aesthetic and satanic culture for money. They don't know or care about Satanism at all. They're just selling T-shirts.
Right. Well, again, here's why that's silly. Everybody's idea of Satan, people at large, society at large over the last 50 years, since Church of Satan's been around just over 50 years, people's idea of Satan and Satanism doesn't come from the Church of Satan. We are in a bubble of Satanism. If you're listening to a fucking satanic podcast right now, you are way deeper into Satanism than 99.5% of the people on earth ever, okay? Most people don't have any idea. Their idea of Satan comes from either the Bible or vague Christian lore, or it comes from pop culture. Things like scary movies, The Omen, fucking Rosemary's Baby, you name it. Modern day horror movies, everybody's possessed and the devil is behind it. That's the idea of Satan. So when these bands are creating imagery and lore and stuff around Satan or Satanism, they're not capitalizing on the overwhelming popularity of the Church of Satan. They're capitalizing on the general pop culture sort of knowledge of Satan, the bad guy, the evil. That's fun.
It's funny you say that. I have to disagree because Peggy says they're benefiting from the veneer of a spooky devil associations appropriated from our iconography and philosophy.
Right.
Without which they would have received only a tiny fraction of the attention they've garnered.
Yeah.
I
find that silly.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
That's literally, you think that you guys would have gotten attention if Christianity didn't exist? No, you wouldn't have. So
Yeah, and again, Church of Satan appropriated all of it. So I'm sure we'll get there.
Right.
But yeah, I don't buy it. So who else accuses who?
Yeah, because the music and an earrings thing, you're probably all thinking, that is so silly. I don't believe that anyone actually does that other than maybe Peggy Nadramia. But there is, I promise, a lot of accusations of cultural appropriation of Satanism thrown around.
Yeah. Church of Satan is like the easiest, most obvious one.
They love to do it to anybody who is not a Church of Satan Satanist.
Correct.
And that does not just include the Satanic Temple. That includes any independent Satanist, anyone who is, in the Temple of Set.
I've been accused, sort of, I guess, this same thing. I've been accused of not being a real Satanist because I, quote, violated one or several of the 7 tenets of the Satanic Temple. People online have told me that you're not a Satanist. You violated this tenet.
Yeah, basically anybody who doesn't look and behave the exact same way that I do in my Satanism, they're wrong. They're not a Satanist. They can't use that word.
Yeah.
Because I think that tenet means something different than you, or because I think that only Church of Satan is the real Satanist or whatever.
And so we're seeing all of this stuff, any sort of cultural appropriation, satanic or otherwise, it all falls into general gatekeeping.
Right.
Right? Like, we're allowed to do this and you're not. and we make up the rules.
Right. And the Church of Satan, if you go talk to any Church of Satan folks, most of them will say, you're damn right, we're gatekeeping.
Right.
We're allowed to gatekeep. We
Yeah.
created Satanism.
That's right. Yeah, that is their stance.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I mean, I understand their take. I do get it. If you invented a thing, and you truly did, you invented a thing and you gave it a name and lived with it for decades, and then others come along and say, I've invented this other thing, and guess what I'm going to call it? The same name of the thing you already invented 50 years ago. I get it. I get it how that could hurt your butt a little bit. But also, you got to fucking get over it. You got to get over it.
I might have said this last week, but it's one of those things that is so, like, you know, I know that Satanism is a serious religion for a lot of people. It is spiritual for a lot of people. It is meaningful activism, whatever. But when it comes down to it, it's still kind of funny to me that we call ourselves Satanists, that we're like, you know,
you said that. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think I might have said it last week. I don't.
You did.
No,
Well, yeah, and look, when we are sitting here now, we're talking about these quote people who take it so seriously. I won't speak for you. I'm a Satanist. I feel that I'm a Satanist. I identify that way. I put myself out there that way. I spend so much of my time and effort focusing on my Satanism. Obviously, I host a fucking satanic podcast. So I take it very seriously. There's nothing insincere about my Satanism. Having said that, I can still be a reasonable person at the same time. I can not be offended or upset when somebody out there uses a fucking pentagram.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there's no part of me taking my Satanism seriously that creates a need in me to tell other people what they can do. In fact, that's part of my Satanism, is to not fucking do that, you know, really.
Yeah, mind your own business, Satan.
Well, and respect one's individuality. Like, I just don't care. I just don't care. So yeah, there's a million different ways that people can be the gatekeeper and attempt to impose their feelings on the behaviors of others and set boundaries on them.
Yeah.
And for the most part, barring some exceptions, I guess, for the most part, I find that to just not be valid. I just don't feel that way.
Yeah.
So why do people call this stuff appropriation? Why is it an issue?
So I guess there's quite a few reasons other than just, I think, the general desire for everyone to be butthurt about things, as to use your own, phrasing.
Yeah.
Which I do think is a thing. And I think, funnily enough, I know that, what's the high priest name?
Peggy Nadramia.
No, what's the guy?
Oh, Peter Gilmore.
Peter Gilmore, yeah. I think he's, he's written about, we talked about it last week, about how in communities, Satanists band together on communities to, to sort of justify their feelings of oppression and blah, 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 blah. And they're just looking for reasons to be butthurt. And COS people get so fucking butthurt about this. And I apologize to COS people that might be listening to this. I'm not talking about you unless you are one of these people that gets butthurt about the term Satanist.
In which case we are talking about you.
Yeah. But I don't really think that you would have made it this far in the podcast unless you're like looking to be mad.
No. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how clear I've made this over the course of however many episodes, but I enjoy bits of the Church of Satan. Mm-hmm. I enjoy bits of Anton LaVey's philosophy. There are parts of it that sit deeply within my Satanism and what we call outsider Satanism. Anton LaVey and his philosophy exists in there. Having said that, there's plenty that we don't get down with, and there's plenty within that community of members or followers of the Church of Satan that are ridiculous.
Right.
And I'm going to say it.
Yeah. So other than the people who just want to get butthurt, there's two reasons that people have an issue with quote unquote appropriation of Satanism. And they can be boiled down to either your Satanism is taking away from the validity of my Satanism. Like if you're running around calling yourself a Satanist in the Satanic Temple, which to many people is just a troll organization. I'm not saying that's valid, but there's people that think that it's just a troll organization. And the prevalence of the Satanic Temple then is lending to the idea that Satanism is just a troll religion, when for a lot of people, it is not just a troll religion. It is a lot more than that. So I can get into some specific examples of that in a moment. But the other idea is that the prevalence of Satanism today, for various reasons, is feeding things like a modern satanic panic. So I think they fall into those two
that's
categories.
the issue. That's the potential issue, that by doing this stuff, taking it lightly or whatever, it feeds into a satanic panic, and that causes harm.
Yeah, so I guess to go back to the first one, activism, if you're just running around calling yourself a Satanist, but all you really do is activism,
Right.
That could be valid. That could be what your Satanism is. It could just be activism is your Satanism, which I believe it is for a lot of people.
Seems to be.
I know it's also a part of people's Satanism,
Yeah.
but for some people, it's just activism for them. And I think that there's, I don't have the numbers to back this up, but, I imagine that people go on, they join the Satanic Temple, they put in their email address, and then they go around, calling themselves a Satanist. They're like, yeah, I'm a Satanist. But if you ask them what that means, they say, oh, yeah, I saw this article one time about the Satanic Temple, and they are doing political activism work and suing Texas or whoever, whatever.
They say because I think people should be able to have abortions.
Right.
And that's pretty much
these
it.
people, those people might not even know that TST, exists, that TST has congregations. They might not know that TST has services. They might not know any of those things.
Yeah.
They just joined on the website and they were like, I'm a Satanist now. And they go around calling themselves Satanists. And I know that some people from the Satanic Temple don't like that because it takes away from the credibility of the Satanic Temple as a religious organization, if that's the idea that's out there, that they're just a troll or political activism organization.
Right. And oddly enough, the Satanic Temple lives in a weird space in Satanism, right? Because, of course, it's activism. That's what the organization was. That's what it is. That is their primary purpose for existing. Make no mistake, that is true. That's not my opinion. That is true. Nobody who looks at the Satanic Temple's website or social media output or anything like that, who knows their history, can objectively tell you anything other than that. They are primarily an activist group. They have tacked on religious facets all along the way, little bit by little bit, more so in recent years since about 2019. But they've done so in order to bolster their activism. They've changed and used words like congregations and things like that to bolster their position as far as standing in court and things like that are basically attached to their activism. So yes, I'm not saying that it isn't your religion, that they're not a valid religious organization. If that's how you feel about them, then so be it. That can be your religion. But their function, their actual tangible function, is primarily that of activism.
Right.
And sure, you can build religion around that if you want to. And the only reason I say you can is because I'm not prepared to have a definition that says you can't. I don't know what makes a religion, and maybe we'll talk about that a little more. But sure, so it's a religion, but yeah, functionally for the organization and for some portion of their members, it is all about the activism. And for people who do take their Satanism to mean a personal religion that they feel strongly about, that activism portion of it may be offensive to them. They might feel that you are inappropriately using Satanism and all of its associated imagery and lore and everything for your benefit in a way that's inappropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other idea is that these Satanists, these people running out there in the world calling themselves Satanists, are a danger to the idea of Satanism. They're causing a satanic panic 2.0
Right.
because they're doing dangerous things or whatever. If a person calls themselves a Satanist and then goes and commits serial murder, that makes Satanists look bad, right? Richard Ramirez is the common one. Now that's not
Right.
modern, but that's my
Even Ramirez is an interesting one
easiest
because
example.
And I could be wrong. I'm no expert on Richard Ramirez, but to my knowledge, he never made any point of calling himself a Satanist. He just ran around with a pentagram carved in his hand saying creepy shit and doing creepy shit. Yeah. And people said, look, pentagram, he's a Satanist.
So he appropriated the pentagram.
Right.
And now,
right. And so he's a Satanist. But He's not. He's
Yeah.
not even a Satanist. He
Yeah.
just was a creep. It's the idea of Satanism being out there at all. It usually has a negative vibe around it. You know, of course, it's the bad guy, right? Scary movies. We know it's the bad guy.
Now, before I get to these other, there's, I guess, 2 more examples about satanic panic that I'm going to bring up. But
Sure.
before I get that, I've recently been hearing people more and more frequently say we're in the new modern satanic panic. We're in a whatever, you know, we're
Right.
having this problem.
Sometimes they say that, or they say it never ended.
It never ended. Yeah, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Now, you were a Satanist during the satanic panic
Yeah.
for a bit.
Sure.
Do you think we're in a new satanic panic? Do you think it compares in any way? What's your opinion there?
Let me start by saying that I'm aware of the reality that a lot of things that get a lot of screen time in our culture today, the news and what have you, a lot of those things, I take them or feel less seriously about them than other people seem to. So do I think the modern satanic panic is the same or similar enough to the satanic panic that we usually refer to in the 80s and 90s? No, I don't think so, but I don't think it's not there at all. I mean, of course, we have things like QAnon, and depending on which websites or news feeds you look at on any given day, that will affect your opinion of how serious or not you think that is, or how big of a deal it is. You know, I could definitely easily find people that I'd say, what do you think of QAnon? And their honest response would be, what the hell's QAnon? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
They don't have any idea what that is.
I didn't know. QAnon's been around for years, and I didn't really know much about it at all until pretty recently.
Yeah. And then there are other people that will have you believe, oh my God, we're deep in a new satanic panic. They're coming after us. We're really at risk. Satanists are being killed. There's a genocide. It's crazy. Don't get me started. I don't think it's there. We don't see things happening like we saw back then. The McMartin preschool trial and people going to jail and all of these things. We don't see that in the same way. Yes, it exists. There are people out there with wild ideas who think evil is upon them. It's out here in the world, and they're terrified at the idea that people are actually out in the open calling themselves Satanists, and they're lying to you and they're doing untold evils in the darkness. That is real. But it's always been real, and that's always going to be real. As long as there are Christians, there are going to be people that are terrified of the devil.
And I think that there are, you talk about that too. You see them as every time you comment on Facebook, you get people that are like, terrified. But I think most people, even in those comments, they're not terrified, but they're disgusted that we have the audacity to use such a horrible,
they don't understand
imagery.
Any of
it. But they might know or believe that we are not theistic Satanists, whatever.
The thing, and maybe this is sort of a plus for the Satanic Temple. How dare I ever give them any credit, but I will give them credit. Part of what the Satanic Temple accomplishes by being out there and visible in the news all the time is that they perpetuate the idea or the reality that Satanism isn't that crazy evil thing that you may have thought that your grandma thought it was. It's not that. And, whether you love the Satanic Temple or not, at the very least, they're not eating children. They're not doing any real evils.
This actually kind of leads me into my other points of modern satanic panic. The Satanic Temple is doing a lot of political activism, fighting for certain rights. And a big one I'll use in this example is abortion. Now, I'm sure that you could use other examples, but abortion is a thing that people have very strong feelings about.
Yeah, and that's the big one for TST.
Yeah. So there's 2 sides to this coin as well. There are some people who believe that TST supporting abortion is bad because abortion is bad and you're making Satanists look bad by associating with abortion. And not even that they necessarily believe that abortion is bad, but they know that some people believe it. That enough people believe it, that Satanism shouldn't be,
Right. Abortion is already a touchy subject that, gets people riled up.
Right.
And now you're associated with Satanism, and now it's even worse. Now abortion is the fucking work of the devil.
Yeah.
As if it weren't bad enough.
Well, actually, yeah, I was going to say that's the opposite side. So there's the perspective that abortion and Satanism being, tied together in some way makes abortion look bad.
Right.
Because Satan, evil, Satan is like abortion, therefore abortion evil.
Right.
And then there's the people that think abortion is bad or abortion is controversial. Satanism is also controversial, but we don't want it to be more controversial by adding abortion into the mix. We want Satanism to stand alone, because if people think abortion is bad and Satanists like abortion, then Satanists are bad too. Does that make sense? There's like two sides of it.
Yeah.
Together, that is, depending on who you ask, feeding the modern satanic panic. It is, appropriating.
I see that perspective.
I see both. I understand both of those perspectives as well. I actually, I got into the satanic, when I first discovered the Satanic Temple, it was something to do with abortion, a few years ago, that I was like, oh, that's funny. That's cool. Whatever. And I don't really know that I don't think that TST should stop trying to do abortion stuff because it makes Satanism or abortion look bad. I don't know that that's what I would necessarily go, but I don't think it's as like clear, this is the right way or the wrong way as maybe some people would think it is.
As it relates to a modern satanic panic, then sure, that can be a factor.
Yeah. Do you think that there's any validity to these claims of appropriation? Do you think that satanic appropriation is a thing?
I think it exists in the sense that people are using symbology or aspects of Satanism. Satanists are appropriating from previous Satanists, and those Satanists are taking from Christianity and other religions and cultures that came before. And modern, non-Satanists are borrowing things from Satanism. Like we said, the Hot Topic goths are doing all the stuff. Rock and metal bands are doing their thing. All of that is real, but if the question is, do I think it's a problem? No.
Well, yeah, I don't think it's a problem either, but I guess even beyond that, COS specifically claims that TST is appropriating their iconography and their mythology and their blah, blah, blah.
Right.
The Satanic Temple says they take their inspiration from romantic Satanism that's been in books for hundreds of years. Are they appropriating the Church of Satan?
Well,
are they appropriating?
Yeah. I don't think they would say this, TST. I don't think if you had Lucian Greaves there, being honest, I don't think he would ever say that he didn't take anything from Church of Satan.
Yeah.
He certainly did.
Yeah.
And when you read those tenets and, you match it up, we did several episodes digging through the Satanic Bible and everything. There's a lot of similarities, more than maybe your average Satanic Temple member would be comfortable admitting to. They like to really separate from the Church of Satan.
Yeah.
And they are, of course, very different. They took those core ideas and they went in some very different directions, but there are things in common for sure. And so, yeah, TST took from the Church of Satan in a way that is similar of the Church of Satan taking from things that came before it.
Oh, yeah?
For sure. And we'll all continue to do that.
Yeah, that was my next point, and we talked about it already, but COS has taken everything that they do from somewhere else.
Of course.
And not just from Christianity or whatever, but there's tons of stuff in Satanism that is like appropriated, or if you would use that word, that is...
it's weird to use the word, right? Because we're supposed to, if appropriation means something negative that shouldn't be done, cultural appropriation, that's a bad thing, right? Like it means...
the connotation is bad,
Yeah, you shouldn't do that.
The words themselves are not bad, but yeah.
Yeah, that's the idea. Oh, that's cultural appropriation. That means that's a bad thing. And so, yeah, Satanists have taken from other places and people take from Satanism, and it's fine.
Yeah. So not just Christianity, but I think they've also taken from tons of, various pagan religions over time. Like, I mean, even, TST's got holidays that are from some type of paganism.
Yeah, Lupercalia.
Yeah.
What is that? Is that a fucking Satanism thing? No, guys. That has nothing to do with Satanism.
Sol Invictus is also not. Sol Invictus is like,
none of them.
We need a Christmas holiday, so let's take this one.
Yeah. None of this stuff originated within Satanism.
And then also anything in rituals in Satanism is coming from... Anton LaVey didn't invent the concept of magic or ritual. It came from somewhere, and I imagine it came from these ideas of
Well,
these
and look,
various Wiccan.
Who has appropriated more than Anton LaVey? I
He
mean, his whole
appropriated a whole
goddamn book was taken from
I
this and
know.
that and the other thing. So, okay. I mean,
Yeah.
come on, guys. You can't. Peggy Nadrami is getting her panties in a bunch about a fucking sigil of Baphomet. Meanwhile, the whole religion stole from 18 different books.
Appropriate is maybe a nicer word in this case than plagiarize.
Sure.
Yeah. So
Also, Peggy Nadrami, I'm sorry, I referenced your panties in a bunch.
do you think she's listening?
No, she listens.
She's alive, right?
She's a listener.
She's the regular one.
She
Okay.
loves us.
I suppose that all brings us to this question. What do you think makes somebody a Satanist?
What is a Satanist?
Yeah.
Well, I know the actual answer. I know the right answer.
To me, it's somebody who calls himself a Satanist.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the simplest way to put it. Sure, I was going to say something like, I don't know, what is a Satanist? Yeah, literally that's someone who identifies as a Satanist. But I guess what is Satanism? I'm sure we've talked about it on here before. That is, to me, it's when you include a veneration of Satan. It's a religion or philosophy that is centered on a veneration of the character of Satan.
Right.
Or I say character of Satan for us, but for some people, actual Satan.
Oh, yeah. And I forgot to bring this up earlier, but theistic Satanists are not excused from the cultural appropriation of Satanism.
Right.
They are not Satanists.
Right. They're devil worshippers.
Right. Never forget.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I think Satanism is.
So do you think that there's a difference between satanic activism and satanic religion? Are they the same or are they different? And if they're different, are they both Satanism? Are they both considered Satanists or forms of Satanism?
Well, here's the problem. Normally, when I'm talking about different satanic philosophies, the religious aspect of it all, all of it, I don't like to draw these hard lines that say, that resemble the gatekeeping. I don't like that stuff when it's done by others. And so I don't want to get in the habit of doing that at all. And so I can't say, well, if your Satanism is about activism, then it's not real Satanism. I guess I don't get to say that. I don't relate to the idea to my Satanism being about political activism, but that's just me. Other people probably don't like things about my Satanism, and that's okay. That's for them. Church of Satan people draw real hard lines about what is and is not Satanism for them, and I can do the same, and everyone can do the same. So the difference to me is nothing more than a difference to me. I don't have a difference that I could send out there and teach you guys, like, this is this, and if you're an activist, you're not a Satanist. I can't do that. If your Satanism is centered around the Satanic Temple and your reason for being there primarily is activism, then so be it. I guess if you want to call it satanic activism or call that your religion, I guess it's fine. It's not mine. But that doesn't really matter. You can have yours, and it can be different from mine, and my Satanism says so. My Satanism says you get to have yours, and so that's the way it's got to be.
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, to me, it's if you use the word Satanist, you're a Satanist and the reason I say that is because Satanism is made up. I mean, not only is like Christianity made up, if you ask me, but
it's all made up.
Satanism is made up after that. It's all made up.
Yeah, it's all made up, and yeah, look, I'm always torn because, like earlier, I think I said I relate to the feelings of the Church of Satan or some of their members when they get a little overly protective about the word. They say they are the protectors of Satanism, and I get it because I'm a huge fan. I start off many an episode giving a dictionary definition of a word. I'm a big fan of defining terms because, as I always say, without a common agreed upon definition or understanding, then you can't communicate. If you're saying a word and you think it means one thing and it means something different to me, we can't communicate. Mm-hmm. So when somebody says Satanism, that's got to mean something, and we exist in a time where it doesn't clearly mean something. Church of Satan members will tell you what they think it means. TST members will tell you what it means to them. I'll tell you what it means to me. But because of that, and again, even that is why I felt it necessary to have a label like outsider Satanism, because I can't just say Satanism, because that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
That means I pray to the devil when my mom's not looking. That means I love Anton LaVey and worship his every word and can't change it. That means I just stand at a peace cross in Maryland to some people, like ridiculous things, So we have to define them. And so I defined outsider Satanism. LaVey and Satanism has their book and essays and their whole philosophy. TST has theirs. And everybody can pick what works for them. So yeah, all your Satanisms are valid, even the ones that I think are silly as fuck.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think I agree. So I know we're wrapping up, but more thoughts from Kirsten.
Go ahead.
I've heard, people say all the time Satanism is a new religion, and new religions break up into, different organizations and different denominations of those religions all the time.
Sure.
I think in that the Speak of the Devil book, he talks about that, Joe Laycock, because he talks about religion. That's just a part of new religions and a part of religion in general.
Yep.
And I heard a Church of Satan member put it this way, in case that's your thought, is that you can't call yourself a denomination of Satanism because there's not even a single thing in common between like COS and TST. So you can't say they're different denominations of Satanism. They're different religions and they should have different words.
Right.
And I don't know, I suppose that makes sense to an extent, but I still think Satanism is made up to begin with, the same way I think everything else is made up.
Yeah, and they clearly do have something in common.
Yeah.
No one can say they have nothing in common.
They have Satan in common.
Yeah,
They literally have
even if
Satan
there
in
were
common.
nothing else. Even if there were nothing else, they have Satan in common.
Yeah.
Anton LaVey, when he referenced Satan, we know what that meant. Everybody knew what that meant back in the 60s. And when TST says Satan, people know what that means.
Right.
And, we might not all agree on like, okay, yes, it's the biblical Satan. It's this romantic Satanism. It's this book or that book. We get it. It's fucking Satan.
Right.
And we use that symbol for a reason, for many reasons, probably.
And the other thing I was going to say is, if anybody's interested in this idea of appropriation of Satanism, how much could there possibly be to say about it? I assure you that the Church of Satan has,
they have a lot.
Tens of essays on this topic on their website. And they're not all about TST. So some of them clearly seem like they might be about TST, but, COS has had schisms before TST and they've been calling people pseudo-Satanists for a while. So if you're interested in it, you can go onto their website and look at all of they have a ton of essays. Scroll through it. They don't all mention appropriation in the name, but you'll figure it out. They're pretty aggressive in the titles most of the time.
Right. We have some of them here, right?
Yeah.
We have a list. Just real quickly, I'll give you some.
They're not all strictly about this, but they talk about it a lot.
They touch on it. Yeah. Kirsten mentioned the one earlier. I think it's called The Cultural Appropriation of Satanism. Another we had on the list is Rebels Without a Cause. Another is Pretenders to the Throne. There's one called A Map for the Misdirected. There's another one called Let's You and Him Fight, and on and on. There are more. We have a long list, and there are surely more than that. So if you go on churchofsatan.com, you can search, and they have a shitload of essays. I always commend them for that way that they expand upon their philosophy over time.
In addition to the Satanic Temple and the Temple of Set and whoever else, they talk about there are a couple of neo-Nazi organizations that you could throw into the danger to Satanism category.
Absolutely.
So Richard Ramirez, and then there's a couple.
What is it? The Order of the Nine Angles?
Order of the Nine Angles and Joy of Satan are two neo-Nazi Satanism organizations.
Right.
I don't know. I'm sure that there are more, but those are the two. I think O9A is the big one, if there is a big one. And I don't know how many people are in Joy of Satan, but I know they aggressively send DMs to people online and say, join the Joy of Satan. They do. But if you Google them, like if you go on their Wikipedia page, it pretty blatantly says they're neo-Nazi Satanists. I don't know how much people are hiding if they feel like a neo-Nazi, like that's their identity. They're not really hiding it. They're saying it. There's definitely people who are
they might not walk
racist.
around during the day really, being flamboyant about that, but they're out there.
Yeah.
Well, what have we learned here today?
Did we solve the problem? Was there
Did we solve the problem? What is the problem?
cultural appropriation?
Oh no,
Is it a problem?
yeah, it's a problem in the sense that there are nerds that run around gatekeeping life, telling you
Yeah.
you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't say you're a Satanist, you can't wear this thing, you can't have this hairdo, you can't eat this food, you can't use this language. And the message, as always, guys, is fuck those people. That's the right answer, right?
Don't be a dick, but fuck those people.
Yeah. Do your thing, be respectful. And if you want to, casually, respectfully borrow from your fellow people in society, I mean, goddamn, don't let anybody tell you that you can't. But of course, don't be a dick. I guess that's where we always sort of land, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Is there anything else? Have we done it?
I think we've done it.
All right, guys, we've done it. If you've got a moment out there, please visit the website at hailsatanpodcast.com. Stay safe out there, and hail Satan.
Snåla av en skydden etter. I hvor vi ser oss